We have some delicious treats from Creature Coffee.
I love bread and I love gluten and I love pasta, and anytime I'm feeling like I need some comfort, that's the food I go for.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'm here with you. Mine's usually always pizza.
It depends on like life flow, right? So typically the comfort foods aren't exactly the most healthy for me. And so I don't know, there'll be periods of time where we're so busy with the kids and maybe I go into this slump of not being my normal self and not having the energy to make dinners and stuff. And so I found like we have this spaghetti casserole in my family. We call it Grandpa's spaghetti. And whenever that happens, where I just don't feel like I have the energy to be the mom that's making the good, healthy dinners, both my kids love it. And so I make one huge sheet pan of it, and we have that almost a week.
Yeah. Okay, I have to ask this because whenever you make the kids like something that's just for them and you think I'm going to eat something healthy, do you always end up?
Oh, always.
Oh my God! Yeah. I'm like the worst. They're like, stop eating our food, and I'm like, but it's good.
Yeah. There's no such thing as like me making chicken nuggets and not eating them.
Right. Exactly. Okay. I know. I'm with you. Well, I'm so excited to dive into food, but more importantly, I'm excited to dive into conversation. And I would just like to start off you telling me a little bit about, when you started noticing mental health and maybe a little bit of backstory around your family and with your grandmother and your father, or is it something that you've kind of evolved over life and learned?
It's been evolved over the last few years. And I'd say like I had a pretty normal life after college. Like in college, very normal. I've never had issues. After college, I moved to Texas, and I have felt like it's been pretty normal. And I haven't spoken to my dad in a number of years, and I'm very close to my mom. She lived with me for a while, so yeah, I didn't think that my life was abnormal.
Right. And when did you start to feel like that shifted?
About 5 years ago, so November of 2014.
Okay.
My mom had moved to Texas and was living with me, and I was working out in Las Vegas, and I was with a friend of mine, and I got a phone call while I was on my trip home to Texas, and it was my mom, and she was screaming on the phone to me, telling me that my brother had died. And she didn't know how, and so she was just crying, saying that her baby had died. And my brother was in Florida at this point, and I could not understand, and I didn't grasp. And I feel really lucky because I was with such a great friend of mine that took me and said, "Okay, we're going to sit down and we are going to figure out what is going on." And so it took like me making phone calls to morgues. I had to call like 3 from the area that he lived in, and finding out where he was and asking them how it happened. And they told me that he had committed suicide and he had hung himself. And
so sorry.
My sister didn't even know yet. And it just didn't feel real.
Did it not make sense because he didn't show any signs?
Yeah,
of
he
somebody?
did not.
Okay.
He was my big brother, and he was so proud of me all the time, and we talked really regularly, and it was a shock, and it was so surprising, and one of those things where I did not want to believe that had happened, and so yeah, it did feel like it came out of nowhere. And yeah, so that really was the point which changed my life trajectory. I feel like that moment in time, I had started dating my husband about a month before that was my husband yet. We were, we just started dating, and so I call him from the airport, and I tell him what's happened, and he never met my brother. So for him, this woman that he had just started dating calls and says, "My brother committed suicide," and I'm crying on the phone, and I landed in Austin really late, and I went to his house, and he let me lay in his arms and just crying and not knowing where to go from there. So there's this, my dad lives in Florida somewhere, I haven't spoken to him in years, and he's not mentally capable of doing anything with this information. And my mom, who is torn apart at her, her oldest dying. So I was given all of the information, and I became the person who was in charge of his estate. And so I feel like I woke up the next morning and I had to be the strong one, and the one who is figuring out what do we do with his remains, and what do we do with his apartment, and how do we tell his employer. And so there was just a series of things that I'm doing, and I'm keeping myself really busy.
While you're doing those series of things, do you feel like you were kind of looking back on it now? Do you see that maybe you were pushing some of those emotions under the rug or not?
Oh yeah, I don't think, I definitely cried in the first few weeks, but it was a matter of telling our family and getting them here for his memorial. So we had his memorial here the next week, and getting that all set up and making sure my mom was okay. And then all of a sudden, like 3 weeks had gone by. Not make this a big thing. I still really wanted to excel in my career. And
did you get a lot of questions around your brother and committing suicide? Did anybody worry about you after that? Did you worry about you after that?
So a lot of people worried about me.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of people reach out. But suicide is this very finicky topic where people are really nervous about it. And if I were to come out and say it to someone, my brother passed away recently. How did, I don't, and a lot of times I don't think people ask, how did they die?
Right.
But in some cases, oh my gosh, was he sick?
Right.
Or, no, he committed suicide. And first of all, committed suicide is such a harsh term because it makes it sound like suicide is something that, it's just so frowned upon.
Right.
And it's such a hard topic, and people don't know how to respond. And so that would be just an immediate conversation ender, stale air between us. He committed suicide. People are like, oh, and then when you hear of someone committed suicide and you don't know anyone that's personally that's ever done it.
Right.
And my brother was a normal person, and he was a great big brother, and he wasn't this he just was normal. And so I hated that my husband had never met my brother, and now my husband, all that he knows of my brother is that he killed himself. And the image that he must have of my brother, and not knowing him, and people that have mental illness, it's not always apparent. You don't always see it. And so I just hated that was his lasting image. And it's a hard topic. I've gotten a lot more comfortable with it and telling people and being open about it. And I think in a lot of cases it's brought a lot of people, connected me with a lot of people where they feel like they can reach out and say my girlfriend who was at my brother's memorial came up to me. She's like, I've never told anyone, but my cousin committed suicide. And it was, so just connecting with other people, because it's unfortunately a lot more common than we make it out to be. And in a lot of cases it's people that are very loved and have nice lives, and it just,
they're in a place that is not apparent, and I think that's why this is a very important conversation, because there is it's bringing that to light, and to let people know when they are struggling that they're not alone, or just to call somebody.